Okay, in this video and on this project, we're learning how to make a stuffed creature. Here's a bunny that we've woven on a cardboard loom. And here's some examples. We have the bunny, we have the owl, and we also have a penguin. You can also do a monster or any kind of creature, something that's doll-like. These are really fun, and they're part of our functional art unit, these being toys. So their function is to play with them. But they're also little pieces of art, and they're all handmade by you, the third grade student. So we need a few things to get started. We need a loom, and in this case, the loom being the tool we weave on, we're weaving on cardboard, and this is just cardboard I cut from a piece that came out of a wrapped item. And you can cut up a box from the cereal or any kind of cardboard you have lying around. What you do need to do is cut notches in each end, and you need to make sure you have the same amount of notches. You don't want them too close together, and you want them cut so that they're all ending up at the same kind of line. So you can always draw a line and cut to the line. I have 11 notches on each end, and you know, it's about 4 inches wide and about 10 inches long, but it doesn't have to be exact by any means. The way you make these creatures is you weave like you're making a bag, and then you stuff it, and you sew the flap closed. So let's get started. Our first step is to string on the warp threads onto our looms. So we've got our loom. We need some tape, scissors, a darning needle. This is a plastic one. And if you didn't have a darning needle, you could always fold a paper clip kind of in this shape. But these are really inexpensive. If you wanted to get one for home, you could get it at Hobby Lobby, Michael's, places like that. You need to cut a small little strip of paper to help you get the yarn on the needle, and you need some yarn. Now, for your warp threads, which are, again, the up and down threads, you don't want anything too fluffy, too thin. You want to save that stuff for later when you're working with your weft. Nothing fuzzy and thin like this. You know, don't go with your shiny, slick pieces that are really thin. You want something just medium weight, not too thick, not too fluffy, or you'll be fighting it with your needle the whole way through. So you just want your basic medium weight yarn. I picked pink just because it's going to show up good for the video, but the warp threads, the up and down threads, they really just don't show up that much when your creature's done. It's really your over and under weft threads that are really gonna, you know, make your creature your creature. So I'm starting by putting yarn in the first notch and leaving a little tail. Once I've left a tail, I've decided that's the back of my loom. Wherever the tail is becomes the back. And I'm gonna just tape down that warp thread tail. Now this has become my front because that guy's back there. So what I do is I start stringing on my warp threads. I go straight down to the notch below the top notch, and then I go over. So on the back, it just looks like a stitch. I just went over and came back through to the front, and then I go straight up to the notch above. So now on the front, you'll see my warp threads are nice and long, and my back will just be stitches. So I go over again. Sometimes you got to kind of finagle it, get it down in there. I come straight down, and I just keep going over a notch, up to the top notch above. And again, you'll start to see this little stitches are on every other notch. So that's how it should look for it to be properly strung. I'm not pulling my warp threads too tight, or it'll start to really pop. You just kind of want to lay them in there. Nothing too tight, but you know, again, don't be super loosey-goosey. You kind of got to be somewhere in the middle with your tension. Again, a common thing I have students do is they'll just go round and round, and you'll have long warp threads on the front and back. That is the thing, and then I have to say, you know, take it off. Let's do it again. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take very long, but you want to save yourself some time and do it so you have the little stitches from the beginning. So once you get all of your little notches strung, you have gotten your warp threads strung on. And see how this little guy's not going all the way down? Sometimes you gotta really make sure they're down in those notches good. Okay, so there it is. I've got my warp threads totally strung on one side. My first tail's taped down, and now I'm gonna cut away from my ball of yarn and tape down my second tail, the end of my warp threads. So you don't need a ton of tape, because later when we take this off the loom, you don't want to really have to fight a bunch of tape. So just a little bit of tape. So now, if we were in the classroom, you would bring this to Mrs. Mulvey and she would fold it for you. That's me, right? I would fold it and put a rubber band around it. And then I will also just tape down, just not a crazy amount of tape, but just for security reasons, we want to put a little bit of tape on the tops of the warp threads. So you do it on that side, turn it over, and do it on the other side. And then you're set to go to start weaving on your weft, which I will show in the next video. In part 2, we'll learn how to get our needle ready, and we'll start to weave our threads.